It was kind of funny coming full circle. Left the family business in 2018. 2023, actually purchased all three of my parents' laundromats. We had the resources to do that because Wash-Dry-Fold POS had grown. To date, we've sold over 1,200 systems to laundromats across all 50 states.
How do you build an app for a laundromat?
Yeah, there's that should be the title of this episode.
Hey, welcome to the New Build Podcast, presented by Bubble, where every other week we explore how the playbook for entrepreneurship is changing thanks to evolutions in AI, software, and culture. I'm Abhinav, video producer at Bubble, and on today's episode, I spoke with Brian Henderson, co-founder of Wash-Dry-Fold POS, which sells point-of-sale systems for laundromats. They've sold systems across all 50 states, and their systems run on their own custom software that they built with Bubble. I spoke with Brian about how he came into the laundromat industry through a family business, and how someone like Brian, who has a background in chemistry, not software development, can end up building an app that modernizes an entire market. Stay tuned for some Bubble updates at the end of the episode, as well as a short special segment that might help you level up your developer skills. But for now, let's dive into my interview with Brian.
My name is Brian Henderson. I'm the founder of Wash-Dry-Fold POS. It's the point-of-sale system for laundromats in the United States for managing drop-off laundry orders and team management, even as far as having a complete repair log for washers and dryers and customer text message notifications when their laundry is ready for pickup, and integrations for delivery with third-party services like DoorDash and Uber as well.
You and I had the opportunity to speak a little bit about your journey back in, I think it was end of 2024 at our last BubbleCon. And I remember being really impressed and also like surprised at how much opportunity I think your business has found within the laundromat space. What led you to doing your own thing? And was it always part of the plan, or was it a surprise?
It's been an interesting journey, and the fact that we focus on just laundromats is kind of a funny one. That my business partner, Ian Gallahan, and I, when we first started out, our thought was, okay, and after we kind of max out this vertical, maybe we'll branch out to other industries and all that. Yeah. And here we are 10 years later, actually, just all in on laundromats, even going so far as buying 3 laundromats of our own as well, in addition to the software company that services laundromats around the country in all 50 states. So we're about an inch wide and a mile deep. This. My dad started Liberty Laundry in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma back in 2005. 2010, I came on board as a manager to help open his second store, and then we quickly opened up a third store. And that work kind of got me a reputation in the laundromat industry at various trade shows for laundromats and publishing articles and trade magazines. Talking to enough people, realized that there was a desperate need for somebody to solve some of these technology systems for modern laundromats. Yeah. And I realized that creating a business was the best way to serve that need, where I could basically package that technology and help them with being a one-stop shop with that. And so started Wash-Dry-Fold POS in 2016. When we first started out, it was as a reseller of other existing point-of-sale software, desktop-based, just a single perpetual license. It wasn't any sort of subscription or anything like that. But I knew enough about how to use it in laundromats to be very successful with it. And I got hundreds of laundromats set up with that. But we got to a point by about 2019 where it became really clear that to go further, we needed cloud-based software and needed to be in control of what features were in our software for very, very laundromat specific features. And that led me to searching for traditional development and the costs associated with that, and getting some of the price tags on the quotes on that, which eventually led me to finding Bubble, where I realized I could build my own software myself and continue to iterate myself and do it in-house and do a lot with a very lean team.
So this lays out a pretty great trajectory for us to follow through on this discussion. Quick tangent before we go. What is a laundromat trade show like? I mean, that sounds so fascinating. I love hearing about different trade shows from different
all the
industries.
The niche industries that are out there that just fly under the radar. People don't even realize. First of all, the laundry industry in general is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's here to stay. It's very stable. I've met more millionaires in the laundromat industry than anywhere else I've ever talked to, except for maybe a bubble conference.
Wow.
So
okay.
It's fascinating. And by the nature of it, that laundromats are so very neighborhood based. And so there's actually a very tight knit community of laundromat owners out there. It's very much a mom and pop shop type of industry. I think it's something over 70% of laundromats are owned by 1 to 3 store owners. So you have a lot of these single store owners that are doing the best they can to serve the community, but then they just kind of struggle with some of the pieces, such as the technology and managing it and all that. Yeah, laundromat trade shows. The big one happens every other year. It's called the Clean Show, and it's for the laundry and textile care industry. There's something like 450 exhibitors at the show over a 4-day period, showing off live demonstrations of equipment and folding machines and machines that hold hundreds of pounds of laundry at a time in them, and all these educational panels and seminars and all of that. And people from around the world come to it. And first one I got to go to was in 2011 in Las Vegas, and then in 2013 in New Orleans. And then by 2015 in Atlanta, I actually got to be a guest speaker up on stage talking about some of the systems that I had helped, figured out to help my family's chain of stores grow to be some of the most top performing laundromats in the country. And it was a standing room only audience. They'd only set out a couple hundred chairs, and about 450 people or 500 people showed up to that panel.
You filled the whole room.
Yeah. And if you ever needed a signal about a need for a product or a service, there it was. It was a very hungry audience. And I stood up there for a couple hours after the 1-hour presentation, just answering questions and talking to people. And just, it was a very clear signal that something was needed. We really specialize in focusing truly on laundromat owners, those who actually have a building with equipment in it, and they're looking at ways of managing that service, and not just a laundromat, but a laundromat with a drop-off or pickup and delivery business in it. And it's a fascinating group of people who get into owning laundromats. It's very, very common to see. I actually personally am friends with several people who used to be investment bankers or worked on Wall Street. And when they wanted to go into business for themselves and they wanted to get out of the corporate lifestyle, there were a number of things about laundromats that led them to the laundry industry. So you have this crowd of very successful, very intelligent, very sharp people who now own laundromats, and they're happier than they've ever been in their lives because it's just a high quality business that serves a real need. It doesn't get more basic and pure than clothing the people, and giving them a safe, clean environment to take care of themselves and take care of their families. So to call it a mom and pop shop industry, that's true. It sounds like it's dismissive, but it's not. In fact, like I said, I've met more millionaires and very intelligent people in this industry than pretty much anywhere else I've gone. It's been neat to see.
Rolling back to the kind of opening of the trajectory that you laid out for us, your father opens a laundromat. Was that a surprise in and of itself? How does entering that feel like? How old were you when that took place?
Yeah, to be clear, when I was in college, I had no plans, no interest in going into the laundry business. That was Dad's thing that he started when I was away at college, and I was off pursuing my degree in chemistry. One of your pre-interview questions was, what did you want to be when you grew up? And for me, I've always been a huge Star Trek, The Next Generation nerd, and I wanted to be a scientist. I'd pretend with a neighborhood friend that we were Data and Geordi doing experiments. And so I guess part of that, when I went off to college, I got a degree in chemistry, and I didn't have a plan for what I was going to do with it. Dad likes to joke that he used to be in a rock and roll band. He was one of the first male telephone operators in Oklahoma for Southwestern Bell. For many years, he got a degree in mass communications, and he worked in radio as a news reporter for pretty much all of my childhood. He was a Boy Scout leader, and that just all naturally led to laundromat ownership. which, that's his joke. And it's true of laundromats. You typically get people with a huge variety of backgrounds that get led to it. But what kicked off that journey really was my older brother was in the Army National Guard around the time of the whole Iraq war and all that going on. His National Guard unit got activated, but then there was some miscommunication and they wound up having to sit around waiting for several months. And so a lot of people, their lives are just on hold while they're waiting to ship overseas. And so in the meantime, he got a job working at a hotel at the front desk and learned that there was nobody to do the laundry for their guests. And around the time, Dad was looking to go into business for himself because the radio station he had worked at had been acquired by a larger company and they downsized the news department. And so he's part of those layoffs and looking into, taking control of his own destiny, and learned that there hadn't been a new laundromat built in Broken Arrow in the last 20 years and, found some property. And after close to a year of development, opened his first store in 2005. And it just, that determination to make it work, because he sunk everything he had into building that store. He literally had a cot in the office because he had no employees when he first opened the store. It was just being there to make it work. And that's part of why we also added on a drop-off laundry service, was just to maximize the revenue out of that location. And realizing very quickly that although it's a laundromat and the way you happen to make money is by doing the laundry, we very much were a customer service business and treating every person who walked in through the door as though they belong, as though they're welcome, as though, you're overjoyed that they've come back. Every year, the Coin Laundry Association, it's a trade association for laundromats, they put out an industry survey so that you can see how your stores compare to other laundromats in your region and also compare to national averages. And by the time we opened our second store in 2010, that's around the time I had graduated from college and I had gotten married, and my wife and I moved back to our hometown, and I was kind of looking for the next thing. Graduated school, and I didn't want to do any more formal education. And so Dad was like, well, help me open up this new store. And that's really when I fell in love with the industry. But that store number 2 very quickly grew into the top 5% of laundromats by gross revenue. And we knew that because of these national industry surveys every year that the CLA puts out. And so we realized that we're really onto something here. And this is just in Oklahoma. This isn't like a huge metropolitan area. It's just the Tulsa area, Oklahoma. And so that quickly led to designing and building store number 3 and opened that up in 2014.
At what point in that process do you start looking at the technology a little more closely?
Oh, I'll tell you. Yeah, absolutely. It was shortly after we opened the store number 2 and having to manage employees across locations. That thought about how can I communicate with the team without having to be in 2 places at once, and think about that central touch point and realize that, okay, if we added like a computerized point of sale system here at the service counter, that's a computer with internet access. And I could create like a password protected website that our employees could look at their work schedule or see messages from management. And then likewise with the point of sale system, that could help enforce our pricing, because before that we just had to cash register and carbon copy tickets, and you just had to have your team memorize their prices and make sure they ring it up correctly, and worry about if they're going to accidentally charge somebody $230 for a $23 transaction because they typed it into the credit card terminal wrong. That really happened. And the guy signed the receipt and he came back the next day and said that there's a problem. Computerizing it, that simplified things a lot, allowed for easier accounting and reporting, but it also added a new wrinkle because up until that point in time, we had never had to worry about computer proficiency for our employees. And after I installed the point of sale system, young guy in his 20s installing computers, I just assumed everybody knew how to use it. But I had employees who had never even held a computer mouse before. They didn't know how to use one. Wow. That kind of stuff. And so realizing, oh, that's a problem. And so having to quickly develop tools and resources for training laundry attendants on how to use this technology, and to try to make things as streamlined as possible became one of the focuses of my work in those early 2010s there, which eventually led to solving those problems for other laundromat owners, as they also needed to computerize their systems. There's kind of two different bits of the terminology. There's point of sale system, which think of it like a cash register at the service counter. You want to go up to the service counter and purchase some retail products, or say you want to drop off your laundry, creating a ticket to track your laundry order and any notes about how you want your laundry done, which eventually led to software we built for entire production tracking of through the wash-dry-fold process and customer notifications. The other thing is for self-service payment systems. Liberty Laundry, my family's laundromats, we were the first laundromats in Oklahoma to add credit card readers to all the washers and dryers in all of our stores. There was a system that allowed for that. It also had, in addition to accepting credit cards, had these loyalty cards that you could sell. So like those type of prepaid gift cards that had a balance on them. The problem is if we sold any of those loyalty cards, they couldn't use that card to pay for anything at the service counter. And that was a frustration to us, because it's like, we've got this customer and they've given us money, but then they can't spend it over at this other part of our business that's right here. You know, it's still the same business, it's still the same customer, but we have these different silos of information and these disparate systems that don't talk to each other. And really just that thought of, man, I wish this stuff all talked to each other, was one of the driving factors in founding Wash-Dry-Fold POS. Just these different towers of information that just don't talk to each other, which always drove me nuts. So turns out I had to build that solution. In fact, fast forward to this last August, 2025, at the Clean Show. We were an exhibitor at that show. We've done that a few times now. It was a very proud moment for me. We were even able to announce some industry firsts. There's a major equipment manufacturer called Alliance Laundry Systems, and they're huge. They're like $1 billion company at this point in time. They service laundromats and laundry companies and all that worldwide. And we were the first point of sale system to be able to announce an integration with their new API for their washers and dryers. And so in our software, for when laundry attendants are working on drop-off laundry orders, they're recording which washers and dryers they actually laundered the clothing in, the laundry order in. With this integration, you're literally able to start those washers and dryers from within our software.
That moment where you start to have that realization, I wish they talked to each other, maybe we do it ourselves. Well, first, I'm curious, do you still also work with the family business, or have you switched full-time to
so the timeline, right? Dad built his first store in 2005. I graduated 2010, and that's around when Dad opened a second store. 2014, store number 3. 2016 is when I started Wash-Dry-Fold POS as a side business to help other laundromat owners. And it grew so much that by 2018, I actually had to step away from the family business and the operations manager role to focus just on growing this new venture. And it was 2019, I think, when my business partner, Ian Gallahan is my business partner. And that's when he stepped away from his full-time job, 2019. And then it was 2023 when Ian and I actually purchased all 3 of my parents' laundromats at one time. And we had the resources to do that because Wash-Dry-Fold POS had grown. To date, we've sold over 1,200 systems to laundromats all across all 50 states. And so it was kind of funny coming full circle to have left the family business in 2018 to then coming back and then buying it entirely by 2023. And in fact, half of the management team were people I had personally hired back in the day. Nice. And so it was about the smoothest transition of ownership as you could have hoped for. But
that's great.
To today, I've now run both companies. We've got a team of 7 people for Wash-Dry-Fold POS and a team of 25 people for Liberty Laundry. And I couldn't do it without my amazing team and also my excellent business partner as well.
Prepping for this call, there were 2 main aspects of your business and your story in particular that I think are equally unique, that I'd love to really drill a little deeper into. and I kept debating which one to ask first.
Sure.
The first one that I wanted to talk about is this journey of modernizing a space, modernizing a vertical. I think that it's such a fascinating idea to think about someone in your shoes, the experience of entering an industry via a family business and then helping it evolve with new technology. As you're going to these trade shows, as you're talking to other laundromat owners, as you're seeing your own laundromat and the different challenges it's facing, and as you are building, first setting out to build what becomes Wash-Dry-Fold POS, are you sensing excitement and hunger for that kind of evolution? Was there pushback at taking that technological step, or was it just pure like excitement, like, yeah, we're ready for it, we just need the guidance?
There's so many unknowns with a startup, and when we began, we didn't know how many laundromats would invest in technology, what the total addressable market was, what price point that we could serve them at, what they would be willing to pay. Where do you buy computers wholesale? And how do you fulfill that? How do you ship that? Where do you buy weight scales? Because laundry is typically done by the pound. How do you control label printers for labeling the bags of laundry and all of that? So when we first started out, we did not begin by building our own software. I mentioned that we were actually retailers of other point of sale software because that was a means to an end. The short answer to your question is it's grown over time. And we've gone from needing to convince people back in 2016 that, computerizing your operations is a really good idea for a lot of reasons, mainly to get you out of paper accounting hell. But all the automations you can get from that and now integrations to now, a lot of people getting into the industry are just coming in expecting to computerize their operations, and they're looking right off the bat for software for running their business. And the assumption is just that, the point of sale system is going to be computerized. If nothing else, like get a Square, tablet, right, or more generic type things. It wasn't until 2018 that we started selling subscriptions to anything of any sort, and realizing that, they're willing to pay this much per month, and here's what it's worth to them. There's a number of reasons why we realized we really needed to take this development in-house and build our own solution. We got to that point with a customer base of a few hundred customers, and with already knowing how to collect subscriptions and charge those and all that. And so we had the resources to sink into building our own software, and the time and the resources to do that, and to build it with feedback from an already established customer base who have already given us money.
Was there a particular feature or possibility or like eureka moment that you remember some of those early customers experiencing that, how did you start getting converts?
Actually, just had one today who sent me an email to say thank you about how much he appreciates our software. Good old Jim Radovic down in Jupiter, Florida. He does a lot of commercial work through his laundromat, a lot of businesses that he does laundry for. And he was spending days and weeks each month invoicing these commercial accounts, because everything before that was all paper-based. And it was just taking up an extraordinary amount of his time on a monthly basis. And then when he was able to computerize his systems and automate things with Wash-Dry-Fold POS, then it's literally just each month a couple of clicks, and his invoicing and whole accounts receivable process has been automated and simplified and streamlined.
I said there were two things I wanted to drill deeper on. The second one is, we talk to a lot of people who have a B2B offering, and usually it is a SaaS product. It's a software. Your business is software, but there's also a hardware component to it. It's a system. And so I'm very curious to hear more about what it's like as a founder, but also as a builder, to develop a virtual product that also has to have a presence and a functionality in a brick and mortar space. How do you build an app for a laundromat?
Yeah, there's That should be the title of this episode. When I first got started telling people I was building a technology company for laundromats, usually the response I got was either, oh, cool, or, I didn't know they had technology.
Yeah, right.
We are a little bit different than a lot of other pure SaaS companies that you talk to, in that in order to subscribe to our software, you have to first purchase the hardware from us, the touchscreen computer, cash drawer, optional weight scale, receipt printer, bag label printer, credit card processing and terminal, and barcode scanner if you want one of those. And there are a couple of reasons to it, and it really gets back to that core mission of why I started Wash-Dry-Fold POS in the first place. Laundromat owners come to us because we have a one-stop shop solution. We've solved all this for you. We know that the hardware that we sell works perfectly, and our software has been fine-tuned to work perfectly with the hardware that we sell. Right. And we provide full tech support for that, because a business owner comes to us to buy our software, not to use our software. They're subscribing to us to solve their problem. And if there's any problems, they know exactly who to contact to get it resolved quickly. The value proposition gets better over time as we continue to roll out updates and new features and all of that. Right. And that's a large part of where Bubble comes into play, and that we're able to just push those updates to all of our subscribers instantly when we roll those out. And so it gets to be more and more valuable. And the proof is in the numbers. We have a net negative churn, in that we charge per store for our software. It's a monthly per store subscription, but then successful laundromat owners oftentimes will build additional stores. And so they come back to us for another system and another subscription. So as they get on and they find success with our product running their businesses, then they go on to build additional locations or acquire other laundromats, and they add in another Wash-Dry-Fold POS system at that store.
For anyone listening who might also be a Bubble developer, I think they might have the same image that I'm having in my head, which is you're in Bubble, you've made a change, you've made an update, you've fixed a bug or something, you move your mouse over to deploy. And most people who are building will think about, I'm going to ship this to the browser, to the web, and I, will then test that it's working on that device. But since you have this hardware component, since you have these very specific systems, are there additional considerations that you have to think about when you're making updates or shipping new features?
Yeah, we have this whole methodology that has gotten easier since Bubble acquired Flusk, by the way, and you're now able to schedule your deployments. Thank you so much.
I think that was announced at the same BubbleCon where we were interviewing.
Yes. And in fact, I was one of the people in the audience who asked about that. And Emmanuel was like, I think it's in Flusk. And so it's like, oh, okay, cool. I didn't even know that was a thing. Yeah. The Bubble gives you logs about how much activity is going on in your app, how many page loads are currently going on, and you can zoom in on particular windows of time. And we know that since we serve businesses, the vast majority of activity in our software happens during business hours, during the day. And so overnight typically is when we'll actually deploy software changes. 3 a.m. Central, to be specific. Sure. Seems to be the sweet spot. You don't want to be deploying an update while somebody's in the middle of a sales transaction. They could, completely interrupt that transaction. So we never deploy during the day unless it's some type of emergency. It's only happened a couple of times where we had to fix something right away. But typically, we'll push updates overnight. And in terms of testing with hardware and making sure that we haven't broken that type of functionality, then we do keep spare hardware in our offices, because our team works entirely remotely, by the way. We're mostly in Oklahoma. We also have an employee in Kentucky, Chelsea. Shout out to Chelsea. So we test to make sure that we haven't broken functionality with hardware through updates too. So I think we've integrated more hardware with our Bubble app than anybody else I know of. I would love for people to reach out to me if they've also found ways of controlling hardware from their Bubble app, because it's really quite fun.
I never tire of hearing all of the different use cases of how people are, building businesses on Bubble, but it's particularly exciting to hear a use case like yours where there are all of these other considerations, but it's still absolutely possible with the tech that is available to everyone today. And that's kind of the whole premise of this whole show. Just to kind of circle back to, looking between where you started in 2016 and what you originally wanted to solve and where you are today, you talked about this trajectory at the start of this conversation, and I think it's, in some ways it seems like a linear, logical.
In hindsight, it looks like I just had it all figured out.
Yeah, I mean, it does. Yeah.
Yeah, Ian and I, we joke all the time about how it's been 1,000 iterations to success. And it's just been a story of making enough right moves, enough guesses that turned out to be correct over time in aggregate, and building on those successes that it's worked out really well. And so looking back after the fact, it sounds like we had it all figured out. But the truth was, with a startup, you never have enough information. You never know the full story of how it's going to go. And it's just, you just need to get started. You just have to take action, and that's going to inform your next steps. And a lot of people will try to build the perfect app first and then launch and then try to go get customers. And that is such a mistake. It's really, you need to get yourself to a spot where you can solve a need that's worth money to somebody and start from there. And that may or may not involve building the software first. In our case, it was several years before we built our own thing. But I think the thing that's been the most marvelous and wonderful to me has been learning how to build our own software and learning how to integrate with different apps and things like that. Back when we were selling somebody else's product, we were very limited in that we had no control over the development of that app. And it was kind of old software by that point in time when we first started selling it. And we had several instances where if only it did this, if only it did that, but it didn't, and so we lost the sale, and that was frustrating to me. And so committing to solving those problems and figuring them out. And then at the 2019 Clean Show, it keeps coming back around to this show, we had 5 different other exhibitors approach us at our booth saying, hey, we keep hearing about you guys, and we want our stuff to communicate with your software, so let's talk. And so
that's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
realizing, oh man, so to go further, we really need to make this cloud-based, and we really need to get a grip on how to develop our own stuff, because we were now limited by the fact that we weren't making our stuff in-house. And so on top of that, had 2 separate conversations that were almost identical, and it was kind of shocking, and that it really steered us to trying to figure out how to build things in-house instead of being dependent on some external developer or agency to make something for us. One of them said they were a pickup and delivery service software. Our booths were nearby each other at the show, and they approached us and said, hey, over the past year, we've been trying to build our own POS system, and we've spent $150,000 on development, and a lot of our customers, they've been patiently waiting, and we've got nothing to show for it. It's garbage. It's no good. We've spent a year and $150,000 on development. We've got nothing. So can we just send people your way for the POS stuff, and then for the delivery, you just send them our way? And we're like, yeah, okay, that sounds good. And this is right around the time that we're, thinking about exploring having our own software built, right? And then a week after the show, another delivery service, unrelated to the first one, called us and said almost word for word, hey, over the past year, we've been working on trying to build our own POS system, spent about 12 months on it, and $100,000. It's garbage. It doesn't, it's no good. It was shocking. And so that led us on a quest of trying to find out, how can we make our own software in-house and also make it work with all this hardware and make it cloud-based? And that led us to shout out to Coaching No-Code Apps with Gabby Roman and Kristen Young and their Built to Scale program. And they were huge and still are huge proponents of Bubble. And it was a means to an end for I, as a business owner, to move my business forward. I already had a customer base and the revenue to help me pay for that coaching to go through their program, to learn how to build it ourselves. And I guess I was a good enough of a student that I even eventually became a part-time assistant coach for them for a little while. That was kind of fun as well. I took it as an opportunity as like accelerated learning, because that's the quickest way to learn something is to try to teach it.
Learn by teaching,
Did that for a while. And so then by the end of 2020, we were able to launch our app, and we've been going from there from then on. And since then, I now have a couple of junior developers that I've been bringing up and training on my own. And so we've got several people now who are working on our app.
Awesome. We like to end by asking our guests what their playbook would be for anyone else who wants to do what you're doing. Based on the conversation that we've had, I kind of think that there's actually two different playbooks I could ask for. So feel free to answer both or pick one. But one is, what would be your playbook for someone who wants to scale a business that includes both SaaS and hardware? And the other would be, what would be your playbook for someone who is looking to use new tech to modernize an industry?
Mm-hmm. When hardware is involved, then you really have more of a question about the logistics of supply chain and storage and sales tax, depending on, where you're warehousing your stuff and where you're selling it and all of that. So my advice really would be just to see if there's a way that you can receive payment first for the hardware before you then fulfill the order. There's actually a whole world of selling hardware that you don't know exists until you start searching for it. So look for third-party logistics companies, see if there's ways that you can use their resources where you collect payment first and then they help you with actual fulfillment of that order. And so that would be a tip on that. I guess other advice for somebody trying to use technology and really just get started on that journey is there's never been a better time to get started. And the amazing thing about the world we live in now is you don't need anyone's permission to get started. Just get going. Just take those first steps. That first bit of action you take is going to inform your next steps. There's 0% chance you're going to have the perfect app right off the bat, even if you spent $150,000 in development or anything. There's no chance. There's no way. And so don't fool yourself thinking that you're going to have everything figured out right at the start. There's no way. It's impossible. The only way you get to a perfect app and a perfect business is to have paying customers giving you feedback and to have experience. And that can be a challenge for somebody who is like a tech geek like me, who likes playing with this technology and stuff and piecing things together and building things, or somebody who is technically proficient. And it's a form of procrastination to just constantly build without actually shipping. And so don't fall into that trap. Start getting feedback from real, actual paying customers sooner rather than later, and you'll be better off and your customers will be better off if you do that. So that's my main bit of advice.
Let's close things out with just some quick rapid fire. I'll ask a couple questions, whatever comes to mind. If you have a quick answer, fine. If you have a little bit more explanation, that's also fine. You actually already answered my first one, which was, what did you want to be when you grew up? It was,
I want to be a scientist. I'm technically a chemist. I've got a chemistry degree. I didn't have a plan to go with that, but I'm glad I went. Thank you, the University of Central Oklahoma, for the scholarship. So, and I like to think with my two businesses, I'm contributing enough back to my state's economy that's helping with that. So it's all worked out well.
What are the top things that you need with you when you sit down to work on Bubble? Like 2 or 3.
All right. You're going to laugh at this. Back in the day, back in 2017, I paid for a business coach for a little while. And one of her best bits of information, the eventual millionaire, by the way, the Jamie Masters, her tip was this waterproof notepad you can get in the shower. It's called Aqua Notes, and it has suction cups on the back of it. It's waterproof paper and a pencil. And the tagline written on the pencil is, never let another good idea go down the drain. And I swear half of my software was written in the shower as you have this time, you're thinking through the logic. The beauty of Bubble is that you don't have to know the code to make your software, but you do have to think logically. You have to solve those problems and think about the sequence of events. And, for me, in nice long showers, your mind is free to think about things and then just realizing, this and then that. And so writing down those notes. So a stack of notes from the shower on that waterproof paper, taking it with me to my desk as I'm working. That's an important part. It's a real challenge. I've been facing this a lot recently. I've got 3 small children and 2 businesses. And then we About a year and a half ago, we moved out, kind of out to the county, instead of being in the city. So it's a lot more driving time and all that. Trying to be creative on a limited timetable is difficult. It's a challenge. And so being crystal clear about what you're sitting down to accomplish is important. So yeah, having time and space to think through things is important. Yeah.
Do you consider Bubble a creative tool or a technical tool, or both?
Is it a cop-out if I say that it's a technical tool that unlocks your creativity? I mentioned before about, my frustrations with code. There are programming languages and tools that allow you to create software that is great, but I swear I just get stymied every time I sit down to type out anything that's code heavy or code dependent. But then something about the way Bubble is built just unlocks my creativity and feels like I've gained a superpower to build the things that I want to build and not get stuck. So Bubble is a technical tool that helps me get unstuck and allows me to be creative.
This next one is a little bit of a hot take sort of question. What is something that you think other entrepreneurs are not paying enough attention to?
Not paying enough attention to.
Or maybe an alternate to this question could be, is there a mistake that you see other entrepreneurs making often that you think is like particularly noteworthy or frustrating?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I was talking about earlier about how you don't need permission to get started, especially if you're brand new. If you haven't started a company before, if you haven't launched something before or made that jump, maybe you are a business owner. I have contacts who they are business owners in other industries, but they're thinking about maybe starting some software in order to reach out to a more national audience, and they just can't quite seem to make that jump. And my advice for them is you don't need permission to get started. You just get started. You just get going. And if that leads to building a subscriber base that makes this a profitable venture, that's great. And if not, then that's okay. If it's better to know sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And I think that goes to it. It's less of an issue now than it used to be, but people seeking venture capital money in order to fund their big idea. Obviously, I'm a firm believer in the bootstrapping type of movement of getting started and growing a company organically based off its own merits. You don't always need that outside validation of some investor to accomplish what you want to do. This is a landscape that's changed a lot over the last several years, but more and more now it's, go out and build the thing, serve real customers, build a real customer base. And then that may attract outside investment and interest and all that too. Yeah. So don't wait for permission, just go for it.
We didn't talk too much about AI in this conversation. I don't know how much AI enters the conversation with Wash-Dry-Fold or just like in your circles in general, but one rapid fire question that I have, as AI helps us do more things, what is one skill that you think people really need to make sure they're good at?
Yeah, no, this goes back to me being a Star Trek nerd. Now imagine Geordi LaForge talking to the ship's computer. There's a crisis he's wanting to solve. He's talking about the problem out loud. He's using this AI software to build computer models and software on the fly to solve the problem. Right. So this is very sci-fi and Star Trek era that we're living in. And so I'm very excited about it. And it fits right in with what Bubble is doing and empowering people to come up with these creative solutions and not getting bogged down in the details that will trip you up unless you know the perfect syntax of something. So right. Skills that people need to be mindful of with AI, in my opinion, is just really focus on being that problem solver. Don't get too wrapped up in the specific way that you're solving it. Focus on the mission, focus on what's at hand, and look at around you to see what's available to accomplish that. Sometimes that includes building software. Sometimes that involves using products that are already available, or in other times it's talking to AI or something generative to help you create something new. But yeah, just continue to focus on that skill of being very good at defining the problem and also describing what success looks like. And if you can do that, then the rest is all details. I mean, look at me. I'm not a coder. It's only recently I've started thinking of myself as a developer in any way. And I've got a very successful multi-million-dollar, enterprise going on here. And I've been able to do that with tools that are available because I'm able to build these solutions with what's available now. It's very empowering.
Awesome. Brian, is there anything else that you want to shout out before we wrap up the episode? We'll also be able to put links down in the show notes as well.
Yeah. Looking forward to next BubbleCon. Planning on going to that when it's in the US again. And yeah, check out Laundromat Ownership, laundromat-ownership.com for our new podcast. And if you are interested in the laundry industry or laundromats, I do recommend reaching out to the CLA. I was formerly on the board of directors for that trade association. They have lots of educational information about laundromat ownership. Do check that out. And then if you do own a laundromat or you get into that and you need a system for running your business and your drop-off laundry service or pickup and delivery, then check us out at Wash-Dry-Fold POS.com. Awesome.
Well, thanks so much, Brian. I really appreciate it. It's been great to speak with you again and dive a little deeper than we were able to a few years back when we spoke. And congratulations on coming up on 10 years.
Yeah, thank you.
If you want to learn more about Brian and Wash-Dry-Fold POS, check out the links in the description. I also want to give 2 quick shout outs that Brian mentioned during our interview. First, if you'd like to learn more about how to build an app in Bubble, you can check out our academy or our YouTube tutorials, but there's also many fantastic community educators out there, like Coaching No Code Apps with Gabby and Kristen. They have a fantastic YouTube channel that we'll link below. Brian gave him a shout out in the interview. And if you want to hear more from Brian, I also want to give a shout out to another recent podcast appearance he made on the Laundromat Ownership podcast, which is hosted by his co-founder, Ian Gallahan. On a recent episode, Brian joined as a guest to discuss, among other things, how they turned a $100 initial deposit into the $10 million laundromat portfolio it is today. You can find a link to their show in our show notes. Okay, a few quick housekeeping announcements. First, it's a new month, which means Bubble co-founder and co-host of this show, Emmanuel Strashnoff, will be doing another live AMA on YouTube. They're usually about 45 minutes, and this next one will be happening Wednesday, March 11th at noon Eastern. You can register early and submit some of your questions ahead of time with a form that we've created. He'll be answering both pre-submitted questions as well as questions coming in through live in the chat. Again, that's Emmanuel's next AMA on YouTube, happening Wednesday, March 11th at noon. Next, we just wrapped up our February hackathon with Contra, where we had a fantastic community of developers building and launching their apps together. You can learn more about that in our show notes, and you can stay tuned for our next hackathon dropping in the coming weeks. Last up, as you probably heard, Claude 4.6 is out, and Bubble is already running on it. We actually partnered with Anthropic to test it before public release, and were able to upgrade Bubble's own AI capabilities in tandem with their updates. So our App Gen feature can now generate better UI and get you that much closer to realizing what you are trying to build. At the same time, our engineering team has been hard at work upgrading Bubble AI's capabilities on our end. So App Gen is now twice as fast. That's a big deal. And our Bubble AI agent is now capable of producing even better UI too. Okay, that's it for announcements. Don't forget to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. If you liked what you heard, please consider leaving us a review or leaving us a comment. All of those really help others to find the show and help us make the show better for you. Last, let's wrap things up with our quick segment, Bubble Tip of the Week. Today's tip is a little bit more advanced and comes from LD Acosta, who is a Bubble developer on our team. Use custom events as workflow variables. Basically, you can modularize pieces of logic in custom events and reference them to build out more streamlined workflows. So this is primarily an organization shortcut, but it can save you a lot of headaches if you have complex workflows that you want to maintain. The example that LD gave me is, let's say you've scheduled a workflow that will send an email to paying users. And in that email, you want to be able to dynamically mention whether or not they have any discounts available, or what that discount might even be. Instead of building out one massive workflow with all of those steps, retrieving and checking through all of that dynamic data, you could contain those individual checks and calculations to individual custom events that input the right variables and output the right return values. So step 1 of your workflow could be a custom event that pulls data from Stripe. Step 2 could be checking if the user has any available discounts. Step 3 could then calculate what the discount is. And then the end of your workflow can just pull all of the relevant information together and build a dynamic email accordingly. Basically, instead of 10 different searches for that discount logic, you can get one result from one custom event. It's a lot easier to manage, easier to edit, and easier to debug. If anyone listening has a tip that they'd like to submit, please feel free to do so, either by commenting under this video or leaving your top builder's tip, trick, or shortcut in a review of this podcast. So thanks for today's tip, LD, and thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you in the next episode.